Before you can build and run a mobile app in GeneXus, you first need to set up your development environment. Thankfully, GeneXus comes with a built-in installation wizard that does most of the work for you. However, I did hit an obstacle or two while setting up my environment, and I want to show you how I got over the obstacles and got set up to develop and test mobile apps. Do note that you can build Android apps on Windows, but you need a Mac in order to build iOS apps for Apple devices. I do not have access to a Mac, so I will only be targeting Android for this tutorial. There is a workaround to this issue that I will discuss at the end. The first step is to click on Tools in the main menu and then on the Update Android SDK option. After a few seconds, the installation wizard will appear and will offer you some options regarding the setup of your Android build environment. I recommend leaving the options at their default values and clicking on the Install button. This will begin the process of downloading and installing all the necessary components for building and emulating Android applications. Depending on the speed of your internet connection, this may take anything from a few minutes to several hours, as gigabytes of data need to be downloaded. I will skip ahead to where the installation wizard has completed. This is what the installer will look like when it is complete. I have a demonstration mobile app loaded and ready. Let's see what happens when I try to build and run it. I will skip some of the build process as it can take a while to complete, especially the first time. As you can see, I have a number of build errors, and from my experience, I can tell you it's not immediately obvious what is causing them. The actual problem is that the installation is not 100% complete, as I discovered by finding the installation log file, which you can find in the folder you installed the Android SDK to. In my case, I used the default install location, so the file was on my C drive in the Android SDK folder, and the name of the file is setuplog.txt. Open this file in Notepad or your preferred text editor, then scroll to the bottom of the file to see any error or warning messages that may have been logged during the installation. In my case, the warning message was that a file could not be loaded. You may have different errors or warnings in your case, and if so, I recommend Googling the specific message you have and troubleshooting accordingly. If you have the same warning message as I do, the fix is simple. All you need to do is go to the folder shown and create an empty file and name it repositories.cfg. After creating the file, go back to GeneXus and once again click on the Tools main menu and then on Update Android SDK and let the install wizard run to completion. Open up setuplog.txt again and scroll to the bottom. As you can see, mine no longer has any error or warning messages in it. You may not be so lucky, and if you see any messages, you will need to search for solutions and go through the troubleshooting process until you also have a clean install log. Each time you resolve an error, run the Update Android SDK option in GeneXus, then open the setup log again to check whether all issues have been resolved. Unfortunately, even with the Android SDK setup log file now showing no errors, my build errors persisted. I browsed the Android requirements article on the GeneXus wiki and found that the Intel Hardware Accelerated Execution Manager, or HAXM for short, needs to be installed. This is needed to greatly improve the performance of the Android emulator. Ordinarily, I believe this would be done automatically by the GeneXus Upgrade Android SDK installer, but the step may fail if it encounters an error. You can find the HAXM installer in the path where you installed the Android SDK in the subfolders extras, Intel, hardware accelerated execution manager, and the name of the executable is Intel HAXM-Android.exe. Briefly, the requirements for HAXM to install correctly are the following. Your machine must support Intel virtualization extensions. Virtualization must be enabled in your machine's BIOS. And the following Windows features must be disabled if they are enabled. Hyper-V, Virtual Machine Platform, Windows Hypervisor Platform, Windows Sandbox, Core Isolation, Credential Guard, and Windows Subsystem for Linux version 2. Do note that after you turn off Windows features, you will need to restart your machine before trying to install HAXM again. When I was setting up my environment, I made very certain that all of these requirements were met, and yet, when I ran the HAXM installer, I still received the following error message. This computer does not support Intel virtualization technology, or it is being exclusively used by Hyper-V. HAXM cannot be installed. Please ensure Hyper-V is disabled in Windows features, or refer to the Intel HAXM documentation for more information. If you are receiving the exact same error message and you're certain you've met all the previously mentioned requirements, you can try the following. From an elevated command prompt, that is, a command prompt run as administrator, enter the two on-screen commands. These will be provided in the video description for you to copy and paste. After you've run the commands, reboot your machine and then install HAXM again. This time it should install without the error. Once you have installed HAXM, you should be able to re-enable Hyper-V. As I understand it, Hyper-V only interferes with HAXM if you run your emulator at the same time as Hyper-V is running. To re-enable Hyper-V, run the two on-screen commands from an elevated command prompt and reboot your machine. Once I had the Android SDK and Intel HAXM installed as shown up to this point, I had no trouble running my Android app in an emulator from within GeneXus, and hopefully the same will be true for you. GeneXus can also run your app directly on your phone via a USB cable, provided you have the correct USB driver for your phone installed and have enabled debug mode on your phone. At the beginning of the tutorial, I mentioned that there is a workaround if you want to run a GeneXus app on an Apple device, but you don't have access to a Mac to natively compile for the iOS platform. That workaround is called Knowledge Base Navigator. This is a native iOS application developed by GeneXus, which allows iOS users to access and navigate your GeneXus application without it being natively compiled for iOS. A full demonstration and discussion of the capabilities and limitations of using Knowledge Base Navigator are outside the scope of this tutorial, so I recommend reading the documentation and going through the freely available mobile development course available on the GeneXus website. That concludes this tutorial. I hope you enjoy developing native mobile apps using GeneXus.